Here we go. Hey, everybody. It's Kara with the She's the Owner podcast. I'm your host. This is episode 84. And we have Leisse Wilcox. We just spent 5 minutes basically teaching each other how to pronounce our names. So, and I wish we would record it because it's pretty funny. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I just sort of started to get into kind of where my story is and how I came to be and the masculine, feminine energy. So I do want to talk and answer the question once we get going, but tell the audience who you are, what you do, and sort of your origin story and how you got to where you are. And then we're just going to chat. So,
I mean, how much time do we have? let me Cole's notes all of this for you. So basically, I'm a professional human in real life adult. That's not an SEO friendly search title. So I've had to like tweak it a little bit to actually run an online business. So I am a master mindset and success coach. And really, I have a passion and a focus on conscious relationships. So when you boil it really down, I am a conscious relationship expert. I was also told to never, ever introduce myself as an expert. So it's like, I struggle with that too. But
who told you that?
One of the most respected publicists for like a top PR crisis management firm. She was like, never. If you're an expert, people will already know. And I'm like, oh, that's so challenging.
Interesting. I don't find it. I liked that you said it. It puts me at ease when you say that.
Thank you. So I'm glad you feel at ease. I'm glad you feel at ease. And really, and that is like, that's my jam, because ultimately all of these great relationships that we each covet, if it's in our business, if it's in our family, our friendships, and oh my God, in our intimate partnerships, each of those is an extension from the foundation we have built on the relationship we have with ourselves. And so when I work with people, I work with them on this like very deep, intimate level, not even talking about, like really deep diving into emotional health, into self-love, into identity. And from there, being able to figure out what are all those patterns that keep repeating in every one of those relationships. So it's like relationships are the Trojan horse into self-love and acceptance. And we go from there.
That's hilarious you say that, because for me, business is the Trojan horse.
Yeah. There's always one. There's always a Trojan horse. And I love that.
Yeah. Because the women I work with, most of them don't even, they're like, the first time they hear me talk in any kind of environment, they're like, holy shit, you're talking about me. I didn't even know that's what that was called.
Yeah.
And I'm like, exactly. I know. So Leisse asked a question about the feminine masculine energy and Tony Robbins, because here's the thing that's really interesting. And like, I talk about Tony on the show, often, not because I'm a Tony coach, not because he's the only person that knows anything, but he's the person that I find for my personality the most effective in getting me to take action. And so for masculine feminine energy discussions, I went to an event called Date with Destiny. That was a year ago now. And that was the one that really solidified it. But I'd gone to a bunch before that. Unleash the Powers Within. I've done Business Mastery 1 and 2. And really, it's just like awareness around this conversation. Awareness that for me, I was single at the time. And I'm transitioning to being separated again from my partner. We did go 3 times we tried. And we're lovingly pulling the white flag out. And I didn't know what I didn't know, but I also had this, I had a podcast already. I was talking about masculine, feminine with women and in business, and very light, but I didn't viscerally understand what I was saying until this event and it was like one exercise he has you do where you dance and this was a live event. So the feeling, I think, was a lot different than it was this past year.
The energy at that particular, when it's live, I bet.
Yeah. And so he does it 8 out of 10, a live event virtually. That I will for sure say, but 10 out of 10, 100% is, like in person. And there was this exercise where the women got up and they played 3 different songs. And he took you from light to dark. So the light feminine to the dark feminine in 3 different songs. And it really was in that moment. And there's, 2,500 women, and the lights were like low and red and very like clubby. And it was like, we were dancing to Cyndi Lauper and then Rihanna, S&M. And then this song that is anchored so deeply in me, I listen to it every day, called You Take My Breath Away by Sarah Brightman. And it was in that moment I got into flow, and literally, like, eyes closed, I was dancing as if I had my dream partner behind me and I was flowing in front of him, but
Mm,
it was 2,500 men. And the energy in that room was all I needed to understand viscerally how to
mhm,
teach a woman how to get into her body
mhm, mhm,
and
mhm,
feel that feminine energy. And in that moment, like, I make jokes, but I just couldn't hang on to the penis anymore. I just
mhm.
couldn't. I had to, like, my body just was like, Kara, no, like,
Oh,
you're done.
that's
And
so
it was
wonderful.
so incredible. And I came home in this flow. And, I thought with my partner, I thought, okay, well, I'm in flow now. Cause I always took that responsibility. Like, I'm so in my masculine. I always want
Yeah,
to increase the business. I always want to do this, this,
yeah.
and this. And he couldn't match it. So then I thought, well, it's me.
Mhm,
So I went into my feminine thinking,
mhm.
I'm single. I actually came home to get the divorce.
Yeah.
And he came to me and he came, drop the kids off, and we had our talk. And I was
Mhm,
telling him all about the event and blah, blah,
mhm.
blah. And he's like, well, I wrote my relationship vision out. And he said, I can do that. And I said, what? He's like, yeah, I could be that guy. I'm like, oh. And then after about a month, it was like, okay, let's give it another try.
Wow.
And what I realized was I was in my feminine, but so was he still.
Yeah,
And in his core, he just is. He's a
yeah,
burly guy. Like, to
yeah,
look at him, you wouldn't think that. But
yeah,
he wants to be led. He
yeah,
wants to be, he wants to be the person, like, like, he's happy to be the beta.
yeah,
And I'm not. And so you have two female feminine
yeah,
energy people now. So that's kind of where we're at. And so,
yeah.
but to tie that into business, like, my business is running completely differently now.
Mhm,
This
mhm,
business, my other business too, but this business
mhm.
in particular. So I hope that, excuse me, answers the
I
question.
love that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because Tony Robbins is like, I mean, he's so alpha, right?
He's not,
And
though. In real life, he's actually not, which is the funniest part. He had to
wow.
learn that. Sage, his wife, they've been together over 20
Mhm.
years now. She's alpha and he was in his feminine. And that's why in the first long while, they didn't even hook up.
Wow.
Like, because his mother was masculine
Mhm,
energy,
mhm,
tiny little chick,
mhm, mhm,
just knocked the shit out of him. So yeah, that he had to learn it. And now, as he's old, he's 60, right? Like, when they're
mhm,
60, they
mhm,
soften.
mhm,
And
mhm.
but yeah, now he's more alpha for sure in that environment. But when you see him with his wife, you're like, oh, couple
Aren't people
goals.
fascinating? Like,
I
aren't we just,
know.
we're so fascinating. It's just like, I get off on this so much. I'm like, oh God, I just want to dive right in. I love this
So yeah,
conversation.
let's go. Like, tell me, what are the things that you see the most in, let's see, your Trojan horses relationships, but like, what's your preference? Do you like coaching women? Do you like coaching couples? Do you like coaching men? What's your sort of like secret sauce there?
So us doing this podcast is like, it's like this seminal moment for me where I can't believe I'm going to say this actually on the air. Only this week did I decide I was ready to identify as a relationship coach
Amazing.
because I'm single and because
Okay.
single has been like my greatest pain point for so long post divorce. It has always been like, who am I to call myself a relationship
Oh my
coach? I'm
God,
like, because
girlfriend.
all you want to do is talk about relationships. And when you look at conscious relationships, oh my God, the broken friendships that I've had that made me think I could never talk to people about friendship is
Yes.
precisely what makes me be able to talk to people about navigating adult female friendship because they're so nuanced and they're so complex.
Yeah.
The fact that am currently without a partner is exactly what enables me to speak to having a conscious relationship. Because if I wanted a relationship, I could just have one.
Right.
Right. And it's going through that process of like intense self awareness of like, I had this, here's what worked, here's what didn't work. It's like, it's so beautiful in business, in family, relationships are so layered. So this is the first time I've been able to like openly declare I'm a relationship coach.
Amazing. I love it. I'm glad you
Um,
did it here.
yeah, thank you. But typically, people come to me because they feel a connection with me. They hear me on
Right.
a podcast or they see me on Instagram or something, and they're like, "I don't even know why I need to work with you. I just know that I need to work with you," and that's been the baseline. And then they come in, and because I don't really have a quote unquote niche, people come in and they have this very holistic experience because we are holistic individuals.
Yep.
You know, when we talk about those relationship patterns, it's not a relationship issue, it is a business issue. And it is a family issue. It's like, it's this, everything is everything. Right. And so I feel like, I totally did not answer your question, but I did go on a big diatribe.
This is how we roll, my friend. So like, and I think that's so interesting because, excuse me. Um, like when we talk about business, like
Mhm.
this is the common thing, right? A woman will come to me, same thing, like they'll come to you for one thing,
Yeah.
and then it's a whole other thing. And I think one of the parts and why I love there's so many women in this space, and
Mhm.
there are a lot of snake oil sales women
Oh
just
yeah.
as much as men.
Big time.
And I have a hard time with those people. I've the people who let me just give me one second here. There's a lot of women and men who will I mean, I've just literally spoken to a couple of them this week where they're like, I hate my job. I did this 3-week or 3-month program online and now I'm a life coach. And I'm like, um, okay,
No, you're not.
so you're not. What kind of, so you've had to find everything's been great. You've worked and made 200K a year like not to say that there's not value in that journey, but that doesn't make you I don't think a course
No.
online makes you a life coach. And so what I see in the industry is there's kind of like it's down the middle, right? There's the people that have actually gone through it. You've gone through a divorce, you've gone through like you understand the mechanics of it. And then there's the people who just think it's trendy right now, honestly, to be a
Yes.
coach.
Yeah.
I've gone through shit too. So like talk a little bit about the history of how why you are so qualified to
Mhm.
help on this level, and maybe if you're comfortable talking a bit about the relationship breakdown and kind of how that happened.
So, as a, like a preamble to that, I think that you asked me, do I prefer to work with men or women or couples
Yes.
or whatever, right? And I typically have marketed to women because that has been, I think, just the comfort zone. And I love working with men. I've had a few male clients, and because my masculine energy is very naturally quite strong, it's so fun to play in both of those arenas because I am so nurturing and I understand the energy dynamics so well. There's such an invitation when I work with women. And then there's almost, I'm pretty playful in general, but when I work with men, there's almost an enhanced playfulness because I feel like I almost like bro up and I totally fem up at the same time. So
Yep.
that's kind of a cool relationship. And I would like to work with couples. I don't know what the logistics of that look like. So I'm just like ruminating on that. But what led me to all of this is, again, in the coaching space, there's this notion that there's a coach for everyone. And I believe that. I really believe that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think very functionally, sometimes when you hire an idiot for a coach, that's the lesson that you needed to do your homework better or like be more informed with the decisions that you're making, or maybe use that critical thinking that we haven't been taught to
Or
use in
follow
school.
the intuition. Like that's a huge one,
Totally.
right? We miss
Totally. It's,
that often.
do you watch The Office? I'm like a super
Oh my
fan of
God,
The
no, but
Office.
3 of my 4 daughters do, and
Okay.
it's an obsession
So there's
around
this
here.
one episode of The Office where Michael and Dwight, who are very well known, are like
Yep.
in the car on a sales call, and the GPS tells them to go right. And immediately right is a lake. And Michael drives into the lake because the GPS is telling
Okay,
him to go there.
I do know
And that
that
is like my
episode.
favorite example, right? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, your intuition is telling you don't drive into the fucking lake. Like go, like take the next right turn. And
Hard
so I feel like
pass.
that sometimes when you hire those, like, sure, possibly well-intentioned, but kind of ill-informed professionals, quote unquote, you do
Yeah.
still get the lesson that you need. But what makes my style of coaching and mentorship and healing so unique is that it's the kind of wisdom that only comes from lived, earned, and learned experience, backed
Yeah.
up by a ton of research and education and deeply grounded intuition, right?
Mm.
Like it's such a full spectrum. I'll be 40 in a couple months and I'm like,
Oh,
wow, now I feel like I can do this, right? And like really stand in the truth of, oh my God, if you want to experience lasting change,
yeah.
you found the right place. If you're not ready for lasting change, please go and hire one of the people who doesn't really mean what they say and doesn't really know
Right.
what they're talking about,
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, it started with an emotionally abusive childhood.
Hmm.
It turned into a marriage that went on for a long time and, again, functionally was totally the right marriage at the right time and like invited 3 phenomenal children into the world. And wow, you know, your greatest pain is your greatest teacher, right? It's like divorce was necessary and was a cataclysmic event in my life. It was
Wow.
so hard. And as I was like in the come down after divorce, I got breast cancer.
Oh
And so it like
shit.
so now I'm like single, self-employed, in the middle of a what was supposed to be a peaceful divorce. And I don't know. I think some people are able to do a very conscious and peaceful divorce that takes two individuals to pull
Yeah.
that weight. And I feel like if you have those two individuals who can pull that weight, why aren't they still married? Like it has like such a degree of intention. It's like, well, maybe they just stayed married. Anyway, so this ridiculously hard childhood, this fucking terrible divorce and that experience around it that led right into breast cancer. And for me,
Yeah.
it was like it broke me and it healed me in like the best possible way. And from there, I had been wanting to write a book for so long and I hadn't felt ready. I was only able to write this book, which became like a self love manifesto. It's called To Call Myself Beloved, a story of
Mm.
hope, healing, and
Yep.
coming home. It was the book that I needed all along. And I
Right.
was only able to write it because I came to that real moment of arrival in which I didn't need it anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
It was like all of those experiences led to this pinnacle of like, oh my God, I'm not attached to any of those stories anymore. And I'm not even attached to the story of overcoming all of those stories. And that's what kind of led me to this moment. It feels like, you know, this second half of my life, it's like, oh, now I get to do this kind of healing work, not because it's like cathartic or not because I need to share this message, because I'm so passionate about the level of service I can bring to the table for people who are in genuine need.
Yep. That's an extraordinary story, and it's what I wanted to touch about on the breast cancer side of it. Like, I think one of the things that women really don't realize is that when we're so deeply in this hunter mode and this
Yeah,
hustle mode, our bodies are going to tell us to slow down,
I
period.
know.
Like, and I think women take that so for granted. And that's one of the things I talk a lot about is the feminine cycle and working around your cycle and through it with it really.
Mhm.
I had a guest on the other day from the agenda period, and they've created an agenda to basically run your business around your cycle. And it's,
Holy
I
shit.
know, right. And like, I was like, where have you been? I mean, I talk about it, but I've never seen anything like this.
That's
And
phenomenal.
every client that I'm going to work with in the future is getting one of these agendas, because it's game changing. And like, I'll be 45 on Sunday,
Ah,
and I'm perimenopausal now, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
like, I can't hustle like I did when I was in my 20s, and it's
yeah,
not age, it's hormone shifting.
yes,
And it's so interesting to me because women, like, thank God you're here and you're fine to tell us
yeah,
the story about, but not most, many, not most, but some
mhm,
are not as lucky,
yeah,
because they don't understand this connection.
mhm,
And I really do believe, like, I did it's called the Dutch hormone panel. I don't know
mm,
if you've heard of it.
mhm,
And basically you pee on some paper
mhm,
5 days or three for 2 days rather, at certain intervals,
mhm,
send it away, comes back to your practitioner, and they go over the results. And all of my things are off. And if you asked me, I would say I'm not stressed. Like, I don't have a stressful
yeah,
life. I've got, yeah, roof over my head, and I don't commute. I'm a coach. I've been working, I have a
mhm,
digital
mhm,
marketing company as well. So I've been doing that for at home. Like, there's no stress. My body disagrees. And it's Corona that's caused it,
yeah,
because my freedom value has been tested, all those things.
ah, yeah,
My cortisol is 181 out of 200.
mhm,
That's too high. My estrogen doesn't want to leave my body. My progesterone doesn't want to leave my body, because I'm not doing the things necessary to make that process happen. So what will eventually happen is I could have gotten some type of female reproductive cancer.
mhm,
How many women are out there hustling their asses off and not catching it, and then boom, they get sick, when
mhm,
really it was that connection of being in flow, being at peace, being
mhm,
calmer. Like, tell me a bit about, do you look at your cancer diagnosis as
mhm.
something that was a result of all the stress, all the hustling, all of the blah, blah, blah?
Well, for me, and again, this is for me specifically, and I like sometimes I think there's a tendency to like spiritualize and bypass like
Sure.
well, you get an illness, you caused it. It's like, absolutely, there is a physical response to emotional illness, right?
Yep.
And I can speak very intimately for this from my experience, but please don't take this as me being like, you caused your cancer and you are at
Right.
fault for this. Like, I'm not saying that. For me, I found three, I didn't find them personally. I found one lump, and then later we found it was three tumors in my left breast, right above my heart. Now,
Oh,
doing a little bit of digging, it's like I can tell you who those three tumors were, and I can tell you the level of repressed anger, unfelt resentment that had accumulated, crystallized, ossified, and then literally bubbled up to the surface of my left maternal
yep.
breast directly above my heart. And like,
So
blessedly for me, when we cut out, yeah,
I have to tell you, remind me, because it's exactly what you're talking
sorry.
about.
So when we cut out, like we literally cut three tumors out of my body. And I remember coming out of that surgery being like, and that is the end of that. Like there was still more
Love
emotional
it.
healing to do, but I honestly did. I remember waking up and being like, okay, like moving on. Right.
Right.
And then I later went on to have a second and mega surgery in which I removed both breasts completely and went flat as a curative treatment, which I stand behind. So my cancer diagnosis was really, again, it like paled in comparison to divorce. That's how extreme I found the divorce
Wow.
process to be. And also in illness, you're supported. People understand when
Right.
people like, if you're having a physical illness, people totally understand. They want to bring you casseroles, right? They want to do the things. If you're having some kind of mental issue, quote unquote, like a divorce, people are like, "Ooh, that's not my business. Don't want to talk about it. Don't want to get involved." And it's like, I'm dying. I'm dying of emotional trauma.
Yeah.
And nobody, very, very few people can participate in that. So I think that's really what exacerbated that level of pain. But yeah, so for me, the cancer diagnosis was like a massive invitation to go to. I thought I'd gone to the shadow places, and it was like, oh, honey, that's so cute.
Yeah.
That's so
You
cute.
thought you did, but you really
You
didn't.
looked under the bed in the
Yeah.
shadow, and now we're taking you to the closet and we're going
Right.
down
Oh
into the
God.
basement. And it's like, it's going to get very, very real.
Yeah.
And having had the opportunity to do that, I was very well supported by my extended family. My own medical community went above and beyond. I had really supportive friends. Like it, miracles, miracles, miracles happened all over the place that it made it a very easy experience. I wrote the book during chemo. It was like things worked out for that, and it really did provide this phenomenal opportunity to go deep.
Wow. I mean, that's that's the thing, right? Like we so one of the things that you brought up was your emotionally like abusive childhood. And I
Yeah.
think that's so interesting because I mean it's not to make it sound funny, but
No.
interesting.
Yeah.
But like same. I mean, I come from alcoholic parents who
Mhm.
physically were abusive and emotionally very abusive to themselves more than anything, really, at the end of the day. And I think there's not enough credit. If you've done the work, you understand
Mhm.
why you need to do the work,
Yeah.
but many, if not most, don't understand they need to do the work.
Yeah.
Like I've got people that I know in my circle who do you think that's why I'm messed up because of that?
Mhm.
Yeah, honey, I do. Like
Mhm.
there's no there's no hack around it. There's no way to escape that. You have to go through it. You have to go through it. And yeah, go ahead.
One of my favorite analogies to use, and I say this in the book, I say it to most of my clients because it's so indicative of the emotional experience, right? So when we're talking about emotional health, I think this is a beautiful illustration. When you stand in front of, like in the before time when we could go to MoMA and stand in front of beautiful paintings, and you like stand in front of Monet's water lilies, you were like overcome by purple. It's just like, oh my God, like I'm just immersed in this feeling of purple. You never stop to think to yourself, wow, what a gifted use of red and blue he used
Mm,
to create this purple. You just experience purple. And our emotions are so similar. For me, I experienced a lifetime of sadness. I just experienced sadness. And it was like, I could reach for alcohol and I could reach for sex and I could reach for shopping and I could reach for all these things. And it was like, oh shit, I'm still sad.
mm.
I had to come to this point of awareness and realize like treating sadness wasn't working. Like there was no antidote to
Right.
sadness. It was only once I got to discover that I was not, I was experiencing sadness, but really that was the culmination of anger and resentment. And those are such powerful and remarkably uncomfortable, like scary feelings to
Oh
have,
yeah.
that when you allow yourself to dissect that sadness and be like, oh shit, I'm not sad. I'm fucking livid. And I've been livid for 30 years. I have been resentful for 30 years. And particularly as a woman, I would argue men obviously are not taught to feel their emotions either, to express their emotions.
Right.
And it is so much more acceptable for them to express rage,
Yep.
anger, whereas women, it's like, fucking swallow that.
Yep.
Not, do not be the angry woman. So all of a sudden being able to tap into that freedom of like, ooh, this is what anger feels like. Suddenly you kind of quote unquote treat anger, you treat resentment, and the sadness goes away.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know that until you're being guided or led by somebody who totally knows what they're talking about to get to that. Right. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's why so many people, they just accept like, well, this is, I was talking with a client yesterday. She's like, I can't imagine that I actually could feel anything different. It's like that, then that is exactly why we need to work,
Right.
right? Somebody who can blow up that threshold and show you not only how you could feel, but specifically, oh my God, how to get there and
Right.
how we make that last.
Yeah. It's not easy. And I mean, I did a clubhouse yesterday, which was really
Mm.
fun. And we should definitely do one together.
Mhm.
100%.
I
Um,
just joined yesterday
oh
and
God.
I don't know anything about it, but I
Just
keep
careful,
hearing.
don't go down the rabbit hole.
Okay.
You could lose real time
Yeah.
if you're not careful.
TikTok syndrome.
Oh my God. It's bad. Yeah, like we're talking about, like I say to my clients, growth is pain and then it's freedom.
Yeah,
And it's people have this idea that personal development, like we're a luxury, and I
I know.
absolutely think that's the furthest thing from, like,
I
when
agree.
Corona happened, I said to my partner, I'm like, it goes coaching,
Yeah.
rent, food,
Yeah.
in that order.
Yeah.
Because if I don't have the support of my coach, I'm
Yeah.
fucked.
Yeah.
Like, business will suffer,
Yeah.
everything else will suffer. It's not going to be pretty. So I think, there's this idea too that it's just something cool that you can do, or something that's it's not, it's like, and um not that it's like fully, like, this isn't therapy, although I mean, I have my own thoughts on therapy. I think there's some good therapists, but a lot of them want to keep you in therapy,
I completely
just like
agree.
anything else, right? Like, just like, not all doctors want to keep you sick, but some of them are incentivized to
Mhm.
keep you coming back for certain things.
Mhm.
um and it's the same like with your emotional health, because yes, there's some traumatic shit, like there's
Yeah.
some things I won't even, if somebody came to me with very, very, very serious trauma, I'd be like, listen, I'm not your gal. But a lot of these things, like, even like, it's just looking within, and it's just sitting still long enough to feel the yucky shit,
Mhm.
to get through it. And ultimately what I think happens, what I see happening, and what's happened for me, is I can reframe things very quickly now
Yeah.
because of all the work I've done. Like, I had a baby. Will have been 6, would have been 6 this May. And I was 21 and a half weeks pregnant, and I went into full labor, had him, birthed him. He's lived for about 15 minutes,
Oh man.
and my milk came in, like, the
Oh
works, right?
man.
And I was seeing a naturopathic doctor. That's sort of my direction for these
Mm.
type of things. And she said, I know that you're going to hate this, but you have to pump for
Oh
2
man.
weeks. And I was like, and I'd already had 3 babies.
Oh,
And I was like, I don't want to pump. And she said, you
no.
have to pump or you're going to go nuts. Like, she said flat out, your hormones can't, you will do a cliff dive
Oh my
and you're
God.
grieving. So you have to pump. And so I did. And it was like, here's what's, when you talk about rage, and I had sales calls on the other company after that I had to
Oh
make. And
man.
that that's just how it goes. Sometimes you don't
Yeah.
don't get time to grieve. But I, maybe a year or two later, I got fucking mad. I got mad. Like, a lot of people would, God wanted him. I'm like, fuck God. The
Mm,
fuck? Why does he need my baby?
mhm.
Or, you know, it like all the things people try to say to make you feel better. And I'm like,
'Cause they mean well,
they
and nobody
do.
has any idea what they're doing or talking about, and
No.
it's like, "Ah, I know what you're trying to do, but please don't say it. Like, say it
Right.
to yourself, but don't say it to
Don't
me."
say to me.
Yeah.
And or, you know, like it just and I tried to sort of, I don't know if I covered it. I just wasn't at the place to really like handle it. You
Mhm.
know, I had 3 other kids, all, you know,
Mm,
mostly adults, but still like I mean, the 2 younger ones were quite a bit younger, obviously, but
mhm,
it just the anger though, right? That
mhm.
and I let that shit out and I got fucking mad. Like, you know, I look just all the reasons you get mad, you know, like I didn't do anything different with this
Yeah,
pregnancy. Why the fuck did this happen? And
yeah.
you know, we would have had our first boy and like all these things. And it was just, but you have to go through that
Mhm,
shadow. And I
mhm.
still like on May 15th, I'll do a post, I'll cry my ass off. I'll feel like shit. I'll think about what he would look like at 6 years
Yeah,
old. I have a picture of him, you know, I can imagine he would look like dad.
yeah.
And like, but that's the thing, it's not easy. But if I
Mhm.
hadn't processed it, and if I don't continue to let myself process it, it's gonna turn into something else eventually.
One of the Thank you for sharing that
Mm,
experience with me. I can only imagine how traumatic that was and may continue to be,
yeah.
right? Like, one of the I often rail on the coaching industry because 'cause I'm like, "Can we stop for a second with the, like, live your best life? Can we stop
Mhm.
with the, like, everything gets easier and easier? Because it fucking doesn't.
No,
Like, life is hard, period. Like, sorry, not sorry, life is hard. Does it mean it's always hard? No. Does it
no.
mean it's not without magic and beauty? Oh my god, no. There's so much magic, there's so much beauty, there's so much simple connection, right? If you look at COVID right now, think about the people who are in their 80s and 90s who are like
Mm.
now at the very end of their
Yeah,
life,
like, what the
completely
fuck?
unable to be with their family. It's like, are you fucking what's this joke? Like
Right.
where's the
Yeah,
punchline here?
yeah.
Life does not get any easier, but our ability to cope with the hardship of
Mhm.
life gets easier.
Yep.
And that I believe that is the value of coaching. And
Right,
I would also argue that's why coaching, like really good mentorship, really good coaching is essential because it's mentorship.
right.
It's how to weather the storm of life. There
Yep.
is no like work with me and then you'll never need coaching again. You
Right.
like you will.
You
You will because
forever, forever.
we are in a constant state of evolution, right?
That's it.
And to really tap into the rawness that sometimes things aren't fair. Sure, I believe there is a reason, and sometimes that reason isn't fair, and it
Right.
still sucks, you know?
Yeah.
That wound, my divorce is years ago, the loss of your baby is years ago, and it's like, what if we could actually just accept that that is a wound that actually might never fully heal?
Mhm.
Like, okay,
Right.
okay. We don't have to be beholden to the
Right.
pain of that past, but we also don't have to like go into self-flagellation mode of like, what else do I need to do to fix it? Because that's
Right.
so
And
masculine.
also,
Like, what
yeah,
else do I need to do
literally.
to heal? It's like,
Yep.
well, what if you actually don't need to heal?
You just
What
learn to walk alongside
it?
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's I love that you're saying that because and I think the masculine woman thinks there's an end date, an
Yes.
expiration date on when I can feel X, Y, and Z. And it's like, and I do have, you know, through all the work that I mean, I've spent, I did the math, like I spent over $100,000 on
Oh
my
yeah.
personal development in the
Yeah.
last 4 or 5 years, like
Yeah.
a big chunk of money.
Yeah.
But this is how I can sit and help someone who maybe lost their baby or whose
Mhm.
business is shitting the bed because they're not in alignment with it, even slightly. But that it's never ever going to be done.
Mhm.
Like forever, you're going to have things that are going to pop up. And it's
Yes.
acknowledging that. And like so many people, women in particular,
Mhm.
do the let's just suppress that.
I
I
know.
can shake it off. I'm Gary Vaynerchuk and I can just go, go, go. And I love
I
Gary
know.
Vaynerchuk,
Yeah.
but I swear to God, it's a boys club. Tony,
Mhm.
Gary, Les Brown, all of them.
Mhm.
They're not built the way that we are.
Yeah, I know.
And they don't like, not that they don't feel emotion, but it's like, you know, I've heard Alison Armstrong say
Mhm.
she's been on my podcast. It was unbelievable having her here. But she's like, she talks about our emotions like another organ.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, if you don't take care of that organ, just like if you don't
Mhm.
take care of your liver, you're
Mm.
fucked at some point.
Yes.
And I think I love that. It's never over. And I think
Yeah.
that's one of the things we have to give permission to women in particular,
Mhm.
that it's not like a guy going to a high performance coach for a blip
Yeah.
of their life, get that contract done and do the deal and then move
Yeah.
on. We're not, I think men should be in coaching forever too, but
Yeah.
you know,
Well, and I know I'm doing like an additional coaching program this year with Layla Martin. So I'm really honing in on sex, love, intimacy, and relationships,
yep.
because I find people come to me increasingly with like they've had sexual trauma. Am I a trauma therapist? No. And but I know how to create such a sacred container of security, like emotional safety and security, that having this extra level of being able to appreciate the context of where that comes from allows us to go deeper in healing forward. So it becomes like actionable
Yeah.
therapy to heal forward, right? And I feel like focusing, like if you've had any kind of trauma in the past, if you think it doesn't show up in your bed, you're wrong.
Yep.
We hold on to that shit at a very deep internal level, right? Emotional level, internal level. And it's like being able to accept the fact that this is a huge process for men, for women, for couples, for singles, giving that time and attention, like you give the food you eat time and attention, like you give moving your body time and attention. It's like, this is worthy of your time and attention, because it's how you be in your
Right.
body. It's how you be in your emotions. It's how you show up in your life. And it's like, I don't know that about you, but like, that's kind of important.
Yeah. And that's another nice segue into the sex and all that sort of arena. Like I have 4 daughters, and I talk very openly about their temple and about self
Mm.
pleasure, and at age appropriate times in their life.
Yeah.
But like, people often say to me, "You think your kids tell you everything? You're crazy." And I'm like, my kids fucking tell me everything. Too
Mhm.
much. Let me
Mhm.
tell you. Sometimes I'm like, I don't need to know that. I'm happy that you're sharing with me, but and I actually don't say anything, but inside I'm dying. I'm like, oh my God, why is she so fucking comfortable to tell me this position and that position? Oh my God. But the beautiful part about that is that they're connected to their
Mhm.
bodies in that way. And I actually raised them, 2 of the 4. The oldest one, I didn't raise her. She came to us when she was 13. My
Mm.
husband didn't know he had a kid until that old.
Oh, wow.
And I was pregnant with what I thought was our first child. I was
Wow.
8 months pregnant, and we get a letter. I was in Winnipeg, where we live in Toronto now. And we get a letter in the mail from his mom from here saying, "Oh, there's this kid who's saying she's yours." And I was like, "Yo, what?"
Wow.
And he's like, "I told you some chick said that she thought and I was like, and literally I go, "Were you going down on me at the time?" Because I would have remembered that conversation, and I have
Wow.
no recollection whatsoever.
Wow.
And so anyway, we did the DNA test, and this beautiful 13-year-old now was my kid. And here we are
Wow.
20 years later. She's like my best friend.
Wow.
So I didn't talk to her about this stuff, although she did
Mm.
come to me in the beginning with major things that happened, and she didn't go to her mother or her grandmother
Yeah.
because there was that container. Even then, I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so with the other 2, though, I talked very openly about
Mm.
their bodies, and
Mhm.
like the 11-year-old, she's developing much earlier than. And it's funny because that one doesn't have any milk. She doesn't even eat meat. If she eats meat, it's organic grass. So there's no outside
Yeah. Yeah.
hormonal
Yeah.
anything in this kid. But she's
Yeah.
like 12 almost, and she's like
Wow.
getting a rack. And I'm like,
Wow.
dude. And she's teeny. She's the
Oh.
cutest little bean ever. And but talking about it, like just like our periods, these things are sacred to the feminine
Yeah.
divine, and we're not openly teaching these girls about their bodies. Like
Yeah.
I have said from day one, I want you girls, like talking about masturbation, I want you girls to know your body,
Mhm.
so that if some little punk ass 15-year-old boy
Mhm.
comes along and says, I can rock your world, you look at him and go, I'm good at rocking my own world, thank you
Yeah.
very much, bye-bye.
Yeah.
Not that it's always going to work,
Yeah.
but it's an interesting conversation, because all this other stuff will happen. My first time was a brutal experience.
Mhm.
It was awful. Like
Mhm.
it was like a joke,
Mhm.
but it set the stage and tone for me in my adult life
Mhm.
around what I thought about sex
Mhm.
and my body. So what are your thoughts on that sort of subject of, the feminine divine and the temple and the body and sex and all that fun stuff?
I think that it's such a beautiful exploration, and I think it requires a deep level of safety, because we
Mm,
have so many layers of shame generational, past lives, patriarchal, religious, like a lived experience. There are so many barriers to experiencing the freedom to talk about it that I think it's so important to recognize that like everybody has their own comfort level for where they're at now. It doesn't mean that's like the threshold that they're at doesn't mean it's always going to be the threshold, but everybody really has a threshold. But for me, one of the like, I think most powerful contrasts or illustrations is like talking about kids and sexuality, for example. If you look at the movies that we let our kids watch or that are like deemed appropriate for kids, like kids love superhero movies. I was like horrified to learn that my children have been watching superhero movies at another parent's house, like horrified. And they're like, "Mommy, like it's not a big deal. Like we love it." And I was watching one with them and I was like, the level of normalized violence that they are consuming by age 8 minimum, like so much normalized violence is like, then we can talk about your clitoris.
Yeah.
You know, if you can have that
I love it.
subconscious experience and access to violence, we're going to say, yes, that's actually not your vagina. That's your vulva. And here's what it looks like. And here's a hand mirror. Please.
You got to come to my house and hang out with me. And my children, they will be like, oh my God, she's you, Mom. Yeah. I say all the words.
And, you know, it's like, I am somebody who has, and I was going to say has had, but no, I have like layers of shame with respect to sexuality and sexual expression. Like I'm a work in progress in that. And esoterically, I am there. When it comes down into the moment, I'm like, I'm not quite there. And that's okay. It's like, I get it philosophically. I get it as a student. And then, you know, when I'm like in the moment, it's like, ooh, that feeling is such valuable insight that you got to go deeper and you got to go a little bit. And it's all of that is okay. It's such a spectrum. It's such a process. But I think for kids in particular, for women in particular, for men, boys are not taught about sacred sexuality. You know, I forget what the most current stat is, but basically kids see porn by 12. Like that's the distilled version. It's like, Jesus, who's going to step in and show them what is not that, right? Like how do we have to cultivate this awareness, this attention that like your period is normal, arousal is normal, exploration is normal, union is divine. And it's like, you have to teach that shit because otherwise it's getting taught.
That's it.
But I don't know about you. Like I would rather teach my kids that than, you know, like XXX.com. I'm like, I would rather give them healthy access to what this is versus the playground version of somebody who found something on their parents' computer they definitely should down, you know?
And it's because the scary part is it's not even the playground version anymore. No, it's the in their hand version. They can see it, but like, and I think that's such an interest, like with my youngest, I won't say her name. I mean, it's not hard to find her, but whatever. I mean, it is actually hard to find her, but the youngest, like she'll say she's at the age where she's like, ew, kissing. And then other times she's like one of my daughters, when she was about 13, the way she identified being aroused was she said, I have to pee. Oh, I have to, she was watching something. Oh, I have to go pee. Yeah. And I didn't really understand at the time. I was like, what is that? And then she'd say it a couple more times, like, oh my God, she's getting horny. Oh my God. So then we'd be like, that's totally cool. Like, that's awesome. And now we talk about, like, I talk to them about, the older ones are, you know, all adults, but the youngest one, I'm like, sex is awesome. And any ideas that it isn't healthy. Like, there's nowhere on planet Earth that sex isn't supposed to be awesome.
Yeah.
Period. That's the end of the conversation. And if you're being told that by anybody, you come tell me, because it's not a bad, it's the best, it's the thing that drives humanity, for God's sake, right? Like,
fear doesn't keep people away from having sex. We are like biologically, genetically programmed to be together. So it's like, well, you're going to get pregnant, or you're going to get taken advantage of, or he's going to disrespect you, or there's going to be an illness. It's like, okay, yes, that is possible, but it's also okay to talk about how special it is. And that's why it's worth waiting. And that's why it's worth distributing in like a, you know, a drop way as opposed to like a flow way. Right.
Right.
When I was, this is so funny. I just remembered this, like right in this instant, when I remember OAC, like grade 13.
I didn't have to experience that because I lived in Manitoba. But
yes,
I do remember we were like, hey, they have to do grade 13.
Okay. So I did OAC. I did grade 13. And I took like an OAC phys ed class,
Okay.
which is really funny because I am like not an athlete, but I got the phys ed award because it
Oh,
was like
cool.
all kinesiology and teaching.
Nice.
And I had to teach a class too. And I went to a Catholic high school for 1 year. And I had to teach a phys ed class to a younger grade. And I was like, well, I'm not teaching them how to play tennis. Like I'm not doing that. So I guess I'll do like a sex ed course. I was like 18. And I remember in that moment, like I taught grade nines, how to be I think the lecture was like 100 ways to be intimate without having sex. And I
Wow.
remember it still, I can see it in my head, like the list of cool things to do. Like I was like a natural relationship coach.
Yep. I
What
was
I'm
just
saying.
thinking the
I
same
was
thing.
18.
Yep.
It's like way to deny it for a full 31 years. But okay. Anyway, I remember at the end when I was getting feedback, the teacher pulled me aside and she was like, at least that was so well done. Like that was so beautiful. That was so high impact. I just have to mention one tiny piece of feedback, especially given that we are a Catholic school.
Yeah.
Forgot to
Don't
mention
talk about vibrators.
like you forgot to mention abstinence.
Oops.
I was like,
oh my God, that's
all
epic.
right.
Sorry. I went to a Catholic school in Winnipeg also, so I feel you.
Oh my God. Anyway.
Man. Yeah, we have like a bet or I don't know what you would call it. Not a rule because they can break it, but we say in it we only implemented it after the middle one. But it was if you hold off to have sex until you're 18, we'll give you $2,500.
Oh wow. Wow.
And here's why. It's funny because my daughters, when they were pissed at me once, they started this big argument, but you're trying to buy our virginity. And I said, buy our virginity or sell it. And I was like, dude, if I was trying to fucking sell it, I'd be making money here. I'm giving you money. Like nice try to argument. I said, you don't have to do it. That's the trick here. Mm-hmm. But the reason we put that in place is because emotionally girls cannot, I don't care how evolved you are, you can't handle it. Like you just can't, you're just at different levels at 18. Like you're still, I'm going to marry every guy I was going to marry, every single boyfriend. Like I wasn't emotionally prepared for what it looked like for me. And I said, so just wait until at least at 18, I'm no longer able to tell you, don't tell them they're not my kids aren't ours.
I know.
They don't belong to us. I know. They don't. We're here to guide them, but they're not our fucking thing.
Surprise present of parenting, right? You get it. Like the narrative of parenting is like, they will love you forever and it's unconditional. And it's like, these children, own them. They're looking to you as a guide and that's it. Like you have no ownership of, you're
the bus driver. You're the bus driver. You're like, you can get in or choice is yours. So we say, like, in our house, we're very jokey, like slapstick type. I'm like, you keep your pants on, you get $2,500. So the 19-year-old, this beautiful spirit, she's had a boyfriend and he's older than her and very respectful of her fact that she's a virgin and was always very, is this okay? Are you okay? Like whatever and because I raised her to be open and raised her to be secure in this area, she would talk to me and she's like, I'm not ready. And I said, then don't. She goes, okay. And he'll understand. And I said, of course he'll understand. He loves you. He will. And so for months and months and months, she said, like, I think I might be ready, but I'm not sure. And I just said, babe, follow your heart.
Like so getting a tattoo. If you're not 100% ready, do not get it.
Don't get it. I said, so what does this kid do on her 18th birthday? She books a trip to fucking Hawaii, her and her boyfriend. And she's like, okay, I'm ready. I'm doing it. And it was like a big buildup and that dad was involved. We're all excited. Like she's losing her virginity. Oh my God. And she's like, I'm going to do it. And, we'll see if maybe, and always of the mind that if I'm not ready in the moment, I'm not doing it.
Do it. Yeah.
So she did it. Beautiful scene, fucking ocean, Hawaii, like everything perfect. And she texts me after, how was it? It was like, it hurt a bit, whatever.
Wow.
And, but it was beautiful. Mm-hmm. And I said,
that's some pretty next level progressive parenting.
Thank you. It was scary though, because what do parents say to me? You talk to your kids about sex, you tell them to do this. And I'm like, yes. So now the little one, I don't think she'll make it to 18 because she's developing so much earlier. But the conversation has to fucking happen. Like beyond everything else, my 4 daughters could all be mothers.
I know.
At very young ages. I was a mother at a very young age. It ain't easy. I was a single mom. It ain't
Mhm.
fucking easy at 20, let me tell you.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I think it's so important, like, to make it first remind them that it's a beautiful physical expression of love when it's right. It's not something to be shameful.
Mhm.
Like my mom was sexually abused, and when I was actually, and I would love to hear your take on this, but she was pregnant with me when she was sexually abused in a
Yeah.
back alley of our house.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I often think, like, I have
Mhm.
some feeling of something, but I know it didn't happen to me.
Okay.
So
So
tell me what you
I
think of that.
I was estranged from my mother for about 30 years, which means
Holy
that
shit.
she left my life and I didn't see her for 30 years until we reconnected fairly recently
Wow.
after like zero communication.
Wow.
And when I was doing my own NLP training, which is the
Yep.
same training that Tony Robbins has, that like we were doing an exercise called a time release. And I was like traveling back along my timeline and figuring out where this profound sadness came from. And you go back to like the root cause of this sadness. And one of the questions at a subconscious level is, did this happen before, during, or after your birth? And while I am like very spiritual and very in flow, I am also Dutch. I am a Taurus. I am like firmly rooted in reality and in practicality, right? So there's like kind
Yep.
of a cool blend. And I remember thinking in that moment, like being guided through as the client, I was like, it feels like it's happening in utero. And I'm like really uncomfortable with that because that doesn't mean I can't over intellectualize it, right? I
Yep.
can't think my way through it. So I went with it. And I remember like this profound feeling of sadness had come from when I was 3 months in the womb. And,
Wow.
you know, we identified it, we released it, and off I went and didn't think about it again until my biological mother and I reconnected. Even a couple years after that, we were sitting on a patio having appetizers and mocktails. And kind of out of the blue, quote unquote, she was like, you know, it's so interesting. When you were I was about 3 months pregnant with you. And I just remember feeling this intense sadness. And I fucking dropped my fork. I was like, life. Like this, like we think we understand life. And it's like, holy shit. So, all that to say, there is zero doubt in my mind that if there was a traumatic event with your mom, to your mom, for your mom, you could carry it on. If she was pregnant with you at the same time, there's like a 100% chance it stayed with you if the lesson didn't get learned or integrated in
Mhm.
some way. That's not a blame thing at all. It's just
No, I
like,
don't take it that
you know,
way. Yeah.
as a spiritual thing, if that lesson didn't get processed, then yeah, it might be yours to deal with. If that shows up for you, then that would be just something to reflect on to see if you'd be interested in going back and like
Yeah.
healing.
I've been thinking about it, just that scene. I just picture her,
Mhm.
and it pops up every now and then.
Yeah. And
Um,
it could come up like when you're in your own intimate environments, or like you could be really close to climax and then something happens, or you
oh no,
feel
I'm okay
you're
there.
fine.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
Thank
Who
God.
know, and it's
I feel
like,
bad when women can't. It's
yeah.
tragic.
Well, and one of the questions, like, you know, that's really common in the kind of coaching that we do is like, you know, how is that a problem? And it's like, okay, so if that's not a problem for you, then maybe you inherited it, but it doesn't matter. Right.
Right.
So it's like, if it's causing emotional pain, then we investigate it. And if it's not, then it's like, okay, interesting. It happened,
Right.
but it's not really affecting you.
Oh man.
It's
This is
wild, hey?
like the best. Oh, it is. It's insane. Like I had a healing by my friend who she was on the podcast as well. And she came to my house. She doesn't do in person, but she was in town. And so she agreed to come and see me.
Mm-hmm.
And for as long as I can remember, my biggest thing, and the reason I even went into the masculine, at 10 years old, really, was my mom would get drunk. She would take a bunch of like Ativan and just go bananas
Yeah.
and would attempt suicide, fake attempt suicide.
Yeah.
Um, if you've ever, if any of you, well, a lot of you have listened to Tony Robbins, the 6 basic human needs, and her needs were not being met. So she would find really creative, crazy ways to have her needs met. Significance for sure was one of them. So she would become very significant. That need would be met when she would go into her other person. And I remember, there was a moment when I was around 10 years old where I just really, I couldn't pinpoint when was this unsafety feeling
Yeah.
happening. That's why women go into their masculine, it's
Yeah.
when we feel unsafe, unseen.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Because that father wound, and it's like it's a mother wound, it's a father wound, like the absence of safety and security
Right.
is so it's both, right?
Yep.
But that overdoing it, it's that overcompensating. It's like, fuck, Nobody else is going to make me feel safe. Here's how I'm going to do it.
Yeah. And even when you're little, it happens, right? Like at
Mhm.
10 for me, that's when it started to happen. So uh, Christina came over to do this healing, and I didn't tell her anything. And
Mhm.
I started to explain myself.
Mhm.
And she
Mhm.
was like, okay, stop. We're just going to get
Yeah.
going. Stop, stop, stop. Because my energy started to get thick.
Yeah.
And we were in my room and sitting on my bed, which I thought was really interesting. Like it was
Mhm.
very cozy and intimate, which at first that closeness was like a little bit, I wasn't
Mhm.
totally sure. My body was like, but I let it flow. And I went back to that moment as a
Mhm.
10-year-old and replayed in my mind what was happening in the kitchen of my house in Winnipeg. And I think, for me, it came up that I was looking at her and I'm thinking, why are you doing this? Like, I'm scared out of my mind, mom. Like, why are you doing this? Why are you freaking out? And I was trying to verbalize. And in my mind, she just shut me down because she needed to meet her needs. But in the new version, when I let myself go back with this healer, she sat down, and both of them sat down beside me and hugged. And I get emotional talking about it.
Oh
And they
yeah.
hugged me and
Yeah.
said, I don't know what the fuck we're doing. We're sorry.
Oh,
Like, this is
baby,
crazy,
baby.
right?
Yeah.
And then I felt both of my parents there.
Ah.
Like mom for sure deeply on the right, dad
Mm,
on the left.
mm-mm.
And I felt, I'm telling you, Leisse, for the first time
Mhm.
ever, I felt safe.
Yeah.
And then I can recall it now. Anytime
Yeah.
I start to feel like I'm flailing, I just
Yeah.
go, they're flanking me here and I'm good.
Yeah.
But I had to, you had to open up to the
Yeah.
going back even, right? And
Yeah.
it was crazy because healers, you guys don't even, you just come in and we say, and then all of a sudden we're on this
I know.
journey. There's no plan.
I know.
And like I know I have that capacity to help people too. I'm just not fully tapped into it yet.
Yeah.
I'm very strong in my intuition, but
Yeah.
I feel like I'm still healing from things that and
Yeah.
that's so when I showed you my tattoo.
Yeah.
So I have the 4 kids, but there's 5 birds, right? One is Finnegan, who's the
Yeah.
son we lost. But the maternal, when you were talking about the energy, when I was in the hospital, my friend came to do Reiki on me and she went all the way up. And then as soon as she got here, it started stabbing pains. And I go, what the fuck did you do to me, Rhonda? And she's like, that's where mother energy, that's the mother center there on this above the heart. And that's why I have the tattoos there. And it was it got hot and painful. And I didn't know much about Reiki at that level yet. And so when she said that, I was like, oh, that makes a whole lot of sense.
Wow.
So thank you for that. But yeah, so that's healers are I mean, it goes back and back and back. And you got to dig for it sometimes. But
And then, circling back to this Trojan horse, it's like, I firmly believe, I have this vision very, very clearly that we are all just walking our own pathway, right?
mm,
And I'm writing a second book this year, like about being alone. And it's like, exploring the truth and beauty of belonging because we're terrified we're going to die alone.
yeah,
And COVID has brought this to the surface of like, oh my God, but I'm by myself. And to me, that's really fascinating as somebody who has been single for so long that it's like, what the hell does this mean to be alone, to be
right,
lonely, to be in solitude? Like we're totally blurring all the lines here, right? But you're going to die alone. Like you are born alone, you die
right.
alone. That's not a bad thing. That is your path. You are a singular being in a totally connected world. And so for me, I always like to think of it as like we're all just walking on these little pathways. And when you come into connection with somebody, it's like those pathways merge and then you're walking on the same pathway for a little while and then
Yeah.
maybe the paths diverge, right? And it's like um it's just so true of all of these experiences. So the Trojan horse analogy, sometimes we come to healing because of our business or sometimes
hmm
we come to healing because of a relationship thing or like a physical wellness thing, whatever it is. It's like this is all about taking that path home
Right.
to yourself. No
Yeah.
matter how you get there, like that's how you get there.
Right.
Sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it's more of a direct route, right? But it's
Yeah.
like healing happens along the way. It's just a matter of being open to receiving that
Right.
when it comes up for you and making it your own unique experience.
Well, we're past an hour now, and so my invitation is, will you come back?
Yep.
And let's do this again,
Okay.
because this is too much goodness to not do another one.
Okay.
But I would love to have you back.
Thank you.
So let's wrap up quickly by saying where people can find you, and then the name of your book, and then when you're anticipating having the second book launched.
Sure.
Would be awesome.
So my website and my hub is leissewilcox.com. Everything is there. I'm on Instagram every day. I did just join Clubhouse. Technically, I'm on TikTok, but really Instagram is like my social media of choice. I have YouTube videos, but Instagram at Leisse Wilcox. My first book, which did become a bestseller, is To Call Myself Beloved, a story of hope, healing, and coming home. Yes, you can get it on Amazon and Audible. It's me narrating it, which is pretty cool. You can also buy it on my website. The second book, my manuscript is due June 1st, and the intention to launch September 22nd.
Amazing. Wow, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on here, and like definitely we're booking another one. And I don't know what we're going to talk about, but it's going to be good. Thank you so much. I hope you have an incredible day, and I'll catch up with you soon.
You bet.
Have a good one. Bye.
Take care.